Hello, everyone. I'm Father Alexander Har,
And I'm the Reverend David Marshall.
and this is a Bridge Between where we bridge our knowledge of the gospel. We bridge our physical distance with one another by being able to spend time talking like this. And of course, we're dads, we're husbands, we're kids of our own. And what else are we bridging today?
I'm bridging a horrible internet connection. So
Yes.
I just realized as soon as you hit record how hard it is, how hard my system's working now. So am I lagging or can you hear me okay?
The audio's fine. I think it's the lag, but as they say, we'll take care of it as best we can in post, and know that people are, of course, more concerned with how we sound than how we look. So
Yes. And because I was going to turn the camera off. So, but you said, no, let's keep seeing you. So,
so today we're talking about a very important word. It's kind of become, I guess, the word has become the question, if you want to really be honest. We're talking about this gospel lesson today, which is, I am the vine, you are the branches. And those who abide in Christ are the ones who are truly, quote unquote, we might say, connected or in communion with Christ. But what does this word abide really mean? It's kind of an old sounding word to some of our listeners who may be younger. Abide does not necessarily enter into our daily lexicon. So I think, what does the word abide mean would probably be a very good question for us to tackle today.
yeah, because we started with, at least you and I were chatting, and I said that I'm going to introduce a really unpopular word nowadays, which is abide. And so that's when you're like, well, let's talk about it, because, well, let's talk about it first. What does the word mean? I want you to imagine a buoy that is floating against the tide. And so the tide is pushing against it, and it's tilted a bit, and there's water running around it like it's in a river. Okay. Do you have that image?
I got the image.
It's abiding. So that is what abiding means. Staying in place, staying grounded or held while the rest of this water is trying to move the buoy and try to get it to go away. Another way to look at abiding is, speaking of bridge between, if you look at the Skyway Bridge, that is abiding. It's abiding both against gravity and against water. So the bridge remains standing. It looks stable because it is, but it's abiding. So in some ways, it can be viewed as standing still while everything else around you is rushing. Does that help?
Oh, that helps a great deal. And I think I'm going to take you up on your offer here and let you turn your camera off, so we preserve that audio. So let me give you the other image that I would like to use, because I love the buoy. I love the kind of going against the current image. But I remember something for the brief time that I did martial arts. I remember them teaching us a stance that was kind of almost like a front stance, the way you positioned your feet in such a way that it didn't matter how hard somebody pushed at you, that you could not be moved.
Wow. Yeah.
And because the way your feet, the way your legs were placed, the way you leaned into it. And so I think of that perseverance is what is our stance and our position in respect to the world and what the world is talking about, so that we may continue to abide. And one of the things that probably we should talk about is that the world is hostile to the gospel. There are forces constantly trying to pull us away from Christ. And so abiding with Christ is pushing against those forces.
Yeah. I'm going to suggest you turn your camera off too.
Oh, all right. Okay. I'm going to,
that
because you're having trouble hearing me?
No, I can hear you, but the lag is happening on this end too, that you're lagging behind. So sorry, folks, you don't get to see us today.
Oh, don't worry. I'll put a nice picture of us.
That would be lovely. Can I send you one?
Video.
Yeah.
Yeah, just send me one.
It's going to look like somebody else, but can I, Christopher Reeve and Superman, something like that? Would that work?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I would like that. Like, what if you could choose your own photo? That would be.
Well, we're not going to get off on that tangent.
Well, I'm
I'm gonna
about to
restrict.
tangent a little bit more. I can't tell you how relaxed I was once I turned my camera off. I'm suddenly like, hey, I like this.
Oh boy, oh boy. Lord knows what
I
you're doing.
know.
Okay.
I know.
So coming back though, when we think of abide, I kind of go through this process of being that person that wants things to be perfect, being that person that wants to kind of hold the line. And all I can think about is that doing that, eventually you're going to get tired.
Right.
You're going to get tired going against the flow. And there's this. Have you seen the image of how some of these Olympic swimmers train in these wave pools?
No. How do they do it?
Well, there's this pool, and it generates a wave against you, and you're swimming against this. So it's almost like a treadmill, but for swimmers.
Oh, yeah. I have seen
Yeah.
those. Yes.
And
Yes.
I think about that at some point you're going to get tired. And this is where the part that Jesus talks about abiding in him, that he is the vine and we are the branches, is really where I think this parable, this metaphor, for no pun intended, takes root.
Mm-hmm.
When we grow tired, we have to remain connected to Christ. When we grow tired, we have to receive that refreshment and that re-energization from Christ. And if we find ourselves spiritually getting tired or falling apart or something, then it's because we may not be as connected as we think.
Well, that's taking it a whole separate thing.
Yeah.
So, if we go back to what you had said about the world being hostile to the gospel message,
Yes.
right before I asked you to turn off your microphone,
Mhm.
that do you want to expand on that a little bit more too?
Well, I think that, when I think of the world and its desires, you
Mm-hmm.
know, I think that there are a lot of things out there that are distractions. Um, and there are also a lot of things that do not mean that they don't mean something good. They're,
Right.
they're trying to actively take me away from a relationship with Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And that has a lot to do with temptation. When we are
Mm-hmm.
tempted, what is our reaction? But
Mm-hmm.
it's acknowledging, like as you were talking about in the baptismal covenant, what will you do and how will you face the evil forces that seek to corrupt us?
Yeah. Yes. The word that's used is persevere. Will you
Yeah,
persevere in resisting? And
correct.
that is another way to describe abiding.
Right.
It's persevering in resisting those things of the world.
Yeah. And that's why I think that the baptismal covenant is very powerful, and it's something that has to be renewed again and again and again whenever we
Mhm.
have the opportunity, because we need to be reminded that it's about perseverance, not perfection.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, we're
Yes.
called to be perfect, right? We're called, you
No,
know.
no. See, I disagree with that interpretation. I don't think perfect is the word that was used as teleos. But anyway, that's a whole separate.
Well, let
We'll
me let
have
me
to
clarify.
bridge between unperfectness.
Yeah, well, let me clarify. I don't believe that. I believe that God asks us to be faithful. That's what I
Thank you.
mean.
Right.
But what I mean by that, though, is that we're called still to be as Christ is. Christ was perfect. We're called to be like Jesus Christ. We're not going to get there,
Right.
but that doesn't mean that we stop striving against the flow of the current.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and, and so, that's what I was saying before, is understanding that it is a process of continual struggle and continual renewal.
Yeah. So when I'm thinking of abiding, I'm thinking of a skit that we did in the St. John's Episcopal School in the middle school. I had the eighth graders perform a skit for the sermon, during the weekly Eucharist for the rest of the student body, and what it was is they were at a dance, and the center person, the star of the show, that she was being pulled by all these different people while the dance music was being played, and one
Mm.
had a sign that she was wearing, and it said alcohol. Another one said drugs. Another one said cheating on your test. Another one said lazy. That all of these things were pulling on her, and that she couldn't dance because of all the things that were holding her down. and then a guy who was dressed like Jesus. And please don't get me into what Jesus looked like, but everybody would recognize him as Jesus. He came in and took her hand and started to dance slowly to the music. And the more that she held on to him and danced, those other things let go of her. And that was the abiding, that while they are pushing and pulling and doing that, if she's with Jesus, if she's abiding with him, then she can withstand all of those forces. In fact, in the skit, she was smiling when she was dancing, of course, because she was relaxed, and that they were abiding. And we actually, it's this passage, this gospel lesson for the Sunday is the one that we used for that particular skit. And because Jesus says, abide in me as I abide in you. And just as the branch cannot bear fruit unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. And we were trying to get that point across of holding on to him will help you get through all of the other forces in the world.
Well, there's something you said in there which I thought I really want to touch on, and that is the next part, which is Jesus talks about being pruned.
Mm.
And, perseverance and abiding in Jesus also means being pruned. I don't know a lot about agriculture. I don't know a lot about trees and such. I do know that there are very smart people I've talked to about this who tell me that trees, especially fruit trees and such, must be pruned.
Yeah.
In order to bear fruit. And it's hard because when I think of what does spiritual pruning look like?
Mm.
It's got to be painful on some level, but what are the things within me that may need to be cut away that aren't of God so that I can actually grow and bear fruit? And some of the stuff that you were talking about is, all these different things pulling you in different directions.
Mm-hmm.
And you now have to decide, okay, I don't want to dance with those things. I want to dance with Jesus.
Yeah. So you have to prune those things away.
Yeah. So what are some things you think that often need to be pruned in our lives?
For some, for me in particular, so Alex, I just lost all my monitors. Are you still there?
I'm right here.
All right. Wow. This is literally flying by, and this is exciting. This has much been what radio was like. So, now I completely forgot the whole pruning idea. Wow, it's just funny that I'm
just the spiritual pruning, the things that need to be, taken away from us, they need to be, pulled out of our lives, essentially.
Yeah, I think the spiritual pruning for me is that maybe I should not look at these monitors. Maybe that was actually a sign.
Well, I mean, I think for example, if we were to look at modern society, spiritual pruning might be how I spend my time, and the fact that so much of my time can be taken up by social media or applications or even work. What are things that need to be pruned back in my life when it comes to developing those healthy boundaries?
That's really interesting. Arthur Brooks wrote an article in the Atlantic about time, and that the whole belief was that we would have more time in this type of industrialized, post-industrial, AI, all that type of stuff. It's supposed to give us more time when, in fact, study after study shows that 200 years ago we had more time than we do now. And it's because time is, of course, constant. And so we have less time to spend hanging out or reflecting or in prayer or at church. And so he came up with this really interesting system of how to prune, how to let some things go. And you just simply write what the top things are in your life that give you joy. And of course you have to put in work and family and all that, but you have to put those things in. And then you list all 15 things that take your time and start chopping off from the bottom, working your way up, start pruning those things out. But it was really helpful for me just to read Arthur Brooks, who is a professor at Harvard Business School. So I'd like to think he's kind of smart, that he is saying, If it feels like you don't have time for things, it's because you don't. And that maybe it's time to look at pruning some of those things out. And then what that does is it allows the things at the top of your list, it allows them to grow and to, in this case, produce fruit.
Well, and that's one of the points I wanted to make when you were saying that is when we talk about loving certain things or loving certain people, but we don't spend time with them,
Mm-hmm.
I tend to kind of call BS sometimes when I'm talking with people about that, because they say, oh, I love my spouse, or I love the church, or I love Jesus, or I love my kids. And I go, well, how much time do you spend with them?
Wow.
Now for some people, it is because they work 2 or 3 jobs. It can be impossible to spend time with their family. I
Yeah.
understand. But I'm talking about kind of the average person who can dictate some of their schedule, and they don't spend time with the people that are important in their life. I would say,
That's really interesting.
you,
And I'm trying not to have our Easter time together sound Lenten in its approach,
Mhm.
um, but we're following the Easter reading of abiding. So, maybe this is where it's headed to. But
Well, and so the reason I bring that up is, for example, if let me just start with myself. If I say I love my children, but I don't take an interest in what they're doing, I don't spend time with them, I don't talk to them, um, you know, can I really say that I love them?
right, you can say you're
Same thing with,
fond.
yes,
You have a
same thing with,
fondness.
because love is active. Love involves charity, as caritas. Love involves a sense of involvement in with people. And
Right.
so I can say that I love Jesus, but if I never pray or go to church or try to follow anything that he says, do I
Or act
really
like
love
him in
him?
the community.
Yeah, or do I really love him?
Yeah. Yeah. I had read when 21 years ago, when Ethan was born, children spell love, Love. They spell love Time. That's how they spell
Absolutely.
love, time.
And
Um,
and as you and I have
yeah,
both seen, and you know this better than I do, because some of your children are older,
yeah,
is that once that time is gone, it's gone.
right.
I am I still get choked up whenever my wife sends me pictures or little videos from when the kids were 4 and 5 years old, because I'm like, gosh, I missed that time so much.
Yeah,
And then I told that to my mom. She says, try when your kid's 45 and 52, then talk to me.
nice. You're like, thanks
And
for the
I'm like,
compassion, Mom. But
oh,
no,
well, no, she's compassionate, but
speaking of our moms, they're going to my mom is going to be in town and is coming to your installation. Is your mom coming to your installation?
yes, they are. Yes, she is.
Wow. Is this where both our mothers can actually meet? That would be
A
fun.
meeting of the moms. There you go.
I know.
So yeah.
I'm very much looking forward to that whole thing. Um but yeah, they've taught us a lot about what they do with their time, and I know that both of our moms have had to prune things from their lives, especially when you and I were young,
Yep.
um, to spend time with us.
Well, and I'll say, just a shout out to my father in terms of, parents and everything. My father pruned sleep from his life.
Mm,
He worked the night shift for several years just to be able to, put us through school and put food on the table. So these
wow.
sacrifices that we make matter.
Yeah.
And coming back to the parable, this metaphor that Jesus uses about abiding and being connected, it's something that's organic. It's supposed to be something that gives life to us,
Hmm.
being connected to Jesus. And as we continue through this Easter season, my hope is that people will start to see how Jesus rebuilds these relationships with his apostles. Because remember, they've been scattered,
Right.
and so
Right.
now he is reconnecting them, almost, you might say, grafting them back on.
Well,
Um,
I like that. Yeah.
and I think that's so important. So for those of us who may feel like we are disconnected from Jesus, just know he hasn't given up on you. He hasn't given up on us. He wants to graft us back on.
Right. And you can look at so Christy's family in Kenwood, California. They are vineyard owners, and they grow wine grapes. And so whenever I hear again about this passage, you're the branch, the vine, and the fruit, I keep thinking of them. And there are long periods in the year where you'll look at a vineyard and there will be nothing growing, and you're thinking,
Mm-hmm.
is that whole field dead? No, it's not. It's still producing. It's just inside of the vine and the branch. You can't see it yet, and then it starts to show up. And I think that also can be our life in faith. That some look as if they've been pruned and no life has started, but it's still well within the trunk of the vine and it's coming out.
Right. So, and that's the spiritual life, is the
I,
willingness to be pruned, and not just at the beginning, but later on in our lives, the willingness to continue to be pruned by Jesus, who says, "Now I want you to bear this kind of fruit."
yeah, yeah. It continues that way. So,
Yeah.
well, my friend, speaking of continuing, I have enjoyed abiding with you in our practice of talking about the gospel in this bridge between in our season 2 Easter edition.
Mm-hmm. And I have as well, and I'm hoping the internet gets a little better on the island,
Gosh,
where you are, but I'm sure that we will make do in all that we do. And just a quick shout out: don't forget, for those of you who are attending the Water and the Word conference this weekend, if you're able to attend, attend. If you're not, pray for those who are attending, and for people like myself, we're giving a workshop on spiritual practices. So
wow! You should bring your pruning shears.
yes, but then I think people might be afraid I might prune them. So, well,
I don't think so. I think they know you, and they're like, "He's
oh,
kind, he's nice. He wouldn't do
he wouldn't do that.
that."
Well, I'm thankful for our time together, and we apologize once again for any technical difficulties. You'll see a nice picture of us instead of a video of a live of us. But don't forget to like and subscribe, comment, and we'll catch everybody in the next one.
God bless.
God bless. And